Random disclaimer.
Before the video starts, I would like to apologize for the quality of the recording. There's a lot of lag frames and the frame rate is very uneven. However, I think the gameplay was pretty nice, so I wanted to use this footage. The Type 56-1 is a Chinese version of the AKS with an underfolding stock. Now you may be wondering, how am I going to be getting a wooden Type 56-1 in Modern Warfare 2 when the only two wooden AKs are the AKS-74U and the RPK? The answer lies in the different attachments the gunsmith system allows you to put on the AK platform weapons. There are barrels that emulate the AK-47, there is a wooden stock, there is a side folding stock, there is an underfolder stock, so there are many different variations of the Kalashnikov that you can make in this game. The base gun we're going to be building off is the Kastov 7.62, or as I prefer to call it, the AK-103. It has a 3-shot kill range up to 45 meters, and after that it has an infinite 4-shot kill range, meaning this weapon has monstrous time to kill at every range possible. Compared to previous AKs in the Call of Duty series, I'd say the AKs in Modern Warfare 2 actually have substantially less recoil, to the point where I'm not struggling to hit people at long range with this gun. Type 56-1 doesn't use an optic in any of her art, so I have to use the base iron sights, but luckily, iron sights for the AK platform in Call of Duty games have historically been some of the best because they're quite simple and intuitive to use. Even though it's always a downside to be using iron sights compared to optics, in the case of the AK platform, it's less of a downside, significantly so, than other weapons. The defining characteristic that separates Type 56-1's Mod 3 from the other AKs is her underbarrel grenade launcher. Compared to the ones from Modern Warfare 2019, the underbarrel grenade launchers in Modern Warfare 2 are significantly more lethal. However, there is no longer any utility grenade launchers. You lose the smoke option and you lose the stun option. You can see in the gameplay that I'm able to get easy kills with the grenade launcher attachment even though it only comes with one grenade, because just shooting in their general area will allow you to just get a kill unless they're using bomb squad. In the cases where you miss or the enemy doesn't die to the grenade launcher, the weapon will switch right back into rifle mode, allowing for easy follow-ups. The grenade launcher does come with some downsides. The only two listed are lower aim down sight speed and lower movement speed. However, I played quite a few games using this setup, and my aim down sight speed wasn't so painfully slow that it got in the way, and I did notice the lower movement speed, but it's not too much of an issue that you can't overcome with good gameplay sense. For the most part, I would prefer a typical foregrip in the underbarrel attachment section because I prefer shooting the guns normally. However, the grenade launcher isn't dead weight like it was in Modern Warfare 2019. I can actually recommend the underbarrel grenade launcher because if somebody's camping in a rooftop or a window, all you need to do is switch over to explosive mode and shoot the wall or the ceiling behind them, and they'll die. Overall, I have no issues with recommending the underbarrel grenade launcher on any weapon that can equip it. It has different functions than a typical gun, and it allows you to adapt to many different types of situations where a simple bullet will not be able to help you. Now, Type 56-1 being a classic AK does use a wooden handguard, and there are two barrel options that feature those types of handguards. One of them has a longer barrel, the other one has a shorter barrel. The longer barrel is more similar to an RPK than it is to a traditional AK, while the shorter barrel seems to be the correct length for the majority of AK copies in the world. The in-game name of the barrel we're using is the KAS-7 406mm. Unfortunately, outside of looking cool, this barrel isn't exactly the best competitively. Its only advantages are that it reduces your recoil, reduces your hipfire recoil, and it increases your bullet velocity. However, the Kastov 7.62 already has really good bullet velocity, and there are much better attachment slots you can use to reduce the recoil, both hipfire and aim down sight. Outside of the benefits being debatable, the downsides to this barrel are also relatively significant. There's a lot of them, and I'm going to go read them out right now. The first listed downside is movement speed. Now, I'm pretty sure this affects both aim down sight movement speed and hipfire movement speed, and this is just a downside in general. Moving slower is almost never better in any situation. The second downside is your damage range, which only goes down by 5%, so while it is a downside, it's really not by much. The third downside is your hip recoil accuracy. I did mention this before, but one of the benefits is hip recoil control. In exchange, you lose hip recoil accuracy. The difference is hip recoil accuracy affects the minimum spread, while hip recoil control affects the amount of shots it takes for your hip fire to reach maximum spread. And the last listed downside is aim down sight speed, which decreases your speed by 20 milliseconds, which isn't terrible, but it's also not helpful. So unfortunately, using this barrel is a pretty bad option. The upsides are kind of okay, I suppose. The bullet velocity doesn't matter too much unless you're playing Warzone. The hip recoil control can be done better by a laser. The recoil control is a small increase, especially compared to underbarrel attachments or muzzle attachments. And well, there's downsides in pretty much every area you want when using this barrel. I seriously don't recommend this barrel. However, there's a hidden benefit. It's called having wooden handguard drip, which is very important. Speaking of classic AK drip, let's talk about the stock attachment. In this game, it's called the ProLite TL3 stock, but I prefer to call it the underfolder stock. This stock is what makes the real-life Type 56-1 the Type 56-1. The -1 designation means it possesses this underfolder stock, meaning I could not have done this gun in Modern Warfare 2019. Now, if you ask me from a real-life point of view, I'm not a big fan of underfolder AK stocks. The main reason is that they go in front of the magazine, meaning if you have an extended magazine, you can't collapse a stock. You can't collapse a stock or you have a drum magazine. It's just kind of a utility problem when you could just use a side folder and not have to deal with that at all. From a gameplay perspective, this is an aggressive player's stock. It increases your sprint speed, it increases your strafe speed, it makes you move faster when crouching, which isn't really important, but it does also increase your aim down sight speed. All of these things are pretty useful for aggressive players, and the only two downsides are that your iron sights sway a little more and you have more recoil. But there's plenty of attachments that can counteract those two downsides, and not too many that give you the upsides of this stock. The benefits of the stock counteract some of the downsides the barrel and the grenade launcher give you, notably the aim down sight speed downsides and the movement speed downsides. The stock improves all of your movement speed except for the basic hip fire and crawling, and it also boosts your aim down sight speeds. Unfortunately, I don't have the stats on hand, so I couldn't tell you if this is the best stock for aggressive players. There's also the side folder stock, and then there's the Zenico stock. However, Exclusive Ace, True Game Data, they don't really have any statistics on the stocks. Exclusive Ace only did stats on the barrels, which I'm able to tell you. Unfortunately, he doesn't test the stock like I said, so we're just sort of left guessing. But it is an aggressive player's stock. It is not a stock for a camper. Absolutely not. There is an RPK stock. That one's for the camper. But also, you should just use the RPK if you wanted to play like that. Moving on to the final attachment, it is the... It's not physically seeable on the gun unless you use the inspect animation, but you will definitely notice its effects because it increases your bullet velocity by either 45 or 50% and decreases your damage range by a measly 2.5%, basically meaning it has no downsides but a very, very good upside. Now you may be wondering, why did I go with high velocity? Well, SMGs in Ghost Frontline increase their damage by equipping hollow point rounds. Rifles and machine guns can equip armor-piercing rounds. In Ghost Frontline, assault rifles are able to equip high-velocity rounds that increase their damage. Even though it doesn't increase the damage in Modern Warfare 2, high-velocity rounds are still available for use in the ammunition section, so for the sake of bringing a little bit of gameplay to Modern Warfare 2, I decided to use them in this setup. I feel like after the initial description, you shouldn't even need to question whether or not this is a good or bad attachment. Oh no, I lost 2.5% of my range. In exchange, my bullets travel 50% faster. This is pretty much like a no-brainer. I don't know how useful the increased velocity will be in 6v6, but Warzone, DMZ, like 2.5% less range is nothing. But 50% bullet velocity means in an equal situation where two people are shooting at each other, your bullets are going to land a hell of a lot faster than theirs will. Now, despite all the praise I've been giving the high velocity attachment, I don't personally use it on any guns in Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer. because the value of high velocity comes from long range, and the majority of the maps in multiplayer do not have ranges or sightlines far enough to truly benefit from the high velocity ammunition. When it comes to fighting in long range in multiplayer, I'd rather focus on things like recoil control or recoil stabilization, because the issue with fighting at those distances isn't the bullet velocity of my firearm, it's my own ability to see and hit the target that's in question. Overall, high velocity ammunition is a great attachment for every mode that isn't standard multiplayer. It's great for DMZ, it's great for Warzone, and it's great for Ground War. There just simply isn't enough of a reason to use them in normal multiplayer because the maps aren't that big. Which is a good thing, because as shown by Call of Duty Ghosts and Modern Warfare 2019, if a map is too big, you'll hear about it from the community. It's been 10 years since Call of Duty Ghosts, and I still hear people complaining about Stonehaven. As it turns out, I was missing a 5th attachment, meaning I needed to go back into my editing software and replace a ton of stuff, and overall it's been just a huge hassle. The production cycle on this video sucks ass. In Type 56-1's Mod 3 art, you can see she has a wooden rear grip. None of the rear grips for the AK in the game have a default skin that is wood. However, I do own an AK skin that gives me a wooden rear grip, which means I had to go ahead and add a 5th attachment to this build and re-edit the video. The rear grip is called the Demo X2 grip, and its only two functions are that it's positive, it lowers your recoil, and negative, your iron sights sway a little more. I don't think I really need to do much deep commentary to tell you that this is probably a good attachment for most ranges that aren't long range. Considering I'm forced to use iron sights in this build, well, it would work out just fine if I remembered to record the gameplay with this attachment equipped. It also doesn't help that I decided to use overpressured rounds for the gameplay instead, because I didn't realize that 5-star HV ammo in Ghost Frontline was directly labeled high velocity until I looked at it. Right, so anyway, finishing thoughts about the gun. Out of the attachments, of which there are 4, the barrel is not good. The stock is good. The grenade launcher is pretty good. The ammunition is very good, but also probably shouldn't be used in standard multiplayer. But if you take off the Orion camo that I've been flexing the entire video, it's pretty drippy. It looks pretty cool. I'm a fan of standard AKs when they're not beat up and rusted to shit like the one from 2019. This one just kind of looks like a well-maintained, good, classic AK, and I think that looks really nice. I think they're pretty cool. So overall, you're using this gun because you're trying to rep classical AKs, trying to rep Chinese AKs. Except the front sight post on a Chinese AK would be a full circle. It would be more like an SKS sight. But yeah, no, this is a cool gun. You should probably use it. Also, because the AKs in this game are really strong too. As for a viable gameplay style using this setup, it's kind of weird. The barrel and the stock are opposed to one another. The grenade launcher is, well, a completely separate playstyle. You should know when to use the grenade launcher and when not to. It's not really adding to the normal gun, it's introducing a separate way of using a weapon. So that one's hard to tell if you want it or not. I think you'll need to practice with it to figure out if you're a fan of the grenade launcher. And the ammunition, well, I've talked about it. It's really your choice if you feel like you have issues hitting people at range because your bullets are too slow. Despite all that, if you look at the gameplay, I actually do pretty well with the gun, meaning it's not terrible. If it was a truly terrible setup, I would complain about it a lot more. It's not the best, but it's not crippling me either. I'm able to play as well as I normally do because, well, the tool isn't bad. I'm planning for my next video to also be about the AK platform. It's either going to be the AK-74M using the cast-off 545 as a base, or the RPK-203 using the RPK as a base. I like all the AK platform weapons in this game, and there's lots of AKs in Ghost Frontline, so I think I have a decent amount of content to make. Hopefully that video comes out in the next week or so, or maybe within a week, depending on how I'm feeling.